The little rooster is now once again a world champion, and he is now number 1 at super flyweight after defeating Srisaket Rungvisai of Thailand to win the WBC 115-pound world championship, along with the Ring magazine belt in their much anticipated rematch. And a lot of people have got that prediction wrong. Estrada, who was fervent, adamant on taking the rematch or requesting a rematch after a fantastic first fight, a very closely contested fight, which I felt was a draw, but it was ruled a majority decision, I believe, in favour of Rungvisai. I felt 114 cards, a verdict that was also submitted by Dave Mereri was the correct scorecards, as Estrada had won. Pretty much he won 4 of the last 5 rounds, but Estrada was determined, got the rematch, whereas Rungvisai opted for a couple of showcase bouts, going back to Thailand, signing a huge promotional deal, headlining, making good recompense as well. So I guess their mental sort of outlooks were, in opposite directions. But Rungvisai finally agreed to the match after a very shaky performance against Iran Diaz, where although he may have dominated, but he was dropped in the fight twice, which were not ruled knockdowns. So I felt there was definitely some vulnerability in his chin, and I saw a little bit of degradation in his boxing ability. He was getting hit a little bit too much. He couldn't really pin down a mover, somebody who was moving laterally, deceptive boxer, taller. So I felt Estrada had a fantastic chance in this fight. He did avenge his previous defeat as well in devastating fashion with a TKO. He just wasn't at the races in his first fight, the one in Mexico where he lost. But that is, the past now. So Estrada, he mentioned that he wasn't at 100% in the first fight. He had a niggling knee injury which inhibited his movements, and he's definitely a fighter, a boxer, puncher who utilizes his legs beautifully, both in setting up punch opportunities coming from long range, working inside the pocket where he tends to work the body, pivoting out, counter punching. So legs are not only fundamental for him, both offensively but defensively more so. And in this fight, he put on a clinic, a magnificent display. Estrada won the first 9 rounds. Rungvisai, bizarrely, and I think he made a monumental mistake, tactical mistake, in deviating from what was an effective strategy in the first fight. He elected to fight the majority of the first sort of 9 rounds in an orthodox position. A surprise to many. I certainly didn't expect him to. I expected him to switch, but not remain in an orthodox position for the majority of the fight, and not make an adjustment much sooner. If you compare Srisikat's orthodox and southpaw stance and how he fights, the two are very different. When Srisakat is a southpaw, his traditional and his most effective stance, he's got a much wider stance. He tends to talk a lot more on his punches, but the key thing which really gives him a lot of success is that he tends to dip low, look like it's going to go low to the body perhaps. It's almost a decoy type of movement, but then he'll either come up with a swivel jab, stroke right hook, or a left hand, to the side of the head, or even hook it or a left cross. And that's been a potent weapon for him over the years, where he's had a lot of success, being, you know, undefeated for the last 5 years. But in an orthodox position, he's got a more compact stance, not as wide. He doesn't dip, he doesn't change levels. So I think Estrada was able to read his punches quite easily. Estrada boxed magnificently at long range. His punch accuracy was rejuvenated. You know, I haven't seen punch selection, punch accuracy from Estrada in a while now. You know, recent performances, he's chose to pretty much plant his feet and stand and trade with his opponents. He's almost become into that prototypical Mexican warrior, but he's been hit too much in his sort of last few fights, particularly against when he took on Orokuta, his counterpart from Mexico, on a HBO telecast, which was a very disappointing performance. But Estrada was clearly not motivated by the fight. He was promised the Rungvisai fight, and it was apparent in his sort of lack of application in the ring. But he was highly motivated for this fight. Looked in phenomenal shape, so confident in the press conferences beforehand. The pad work he was doing, combinations he was working at a high speed, visually was stunning, and I felt he just had the perfect balance of physical and mental. The mind frame was just perfect, so I felt it was going to be a good performance. He made Srisakat look extremely ordinary, a little bit cumbersome, overcommitting with his punches. Was able to pivot off, hitting with beautiful uppercuts, check left hooks, short right hands to the body. His jabs, straight punches in particular, were excellent. You know, piercing the guard as well. He looked to have hurt Srisakat to the body a few times as well. Rungvisai was clearly frustrated. And Estrada built up a comfortable 9-round lead. It was all about concentration for him there, not tending to do anything too stupid, not really trying to engage or trade with Rungvisai, who is predominantly a 95% power puncher. He doesn't really utilize the jab to set up his punches. So very unusual, but he seems to get a lot of success from that. So, you know, that's his formula. So, but why he chose to fight in orthodox, I think it was a monumental mistake. Estrada, to be credited, he may have been surprised, but he dealt with Rungvisai very easily. When Srisakat switched to southpaw from round 9 onwards, he definitely won the last 3 rounds. I felt the 12th was a little bit closer, but when he's operating in southpaw, you can see that he just opens up, he just wings away punches, and it's very hard to get inside. You can't really use any feints, because he's not only winging punches, you know, wide hooks, but he's changing levels, so it's very hard to come down with any chopping shots. You've just got to resort to a high guard, you know, get back on your bike and get the hell out of it, dodge. But Estrada, I felt, made a foolish mistake of trying to trade with, you know, the machismo Mexican style just comes out, you know, buoyed by the forum, you know, the pro-Mexican crowd as well, or the US-based sort of Hispanics, you know. So Estrada had the crowd, you know, he was building from their energy as well. He wanted to try and stop Rungvisai as well, but yeah. fight concluded, the scoring was. I felt that Estrada was not going to get a fair decision on this fight, given that Rungvisai was the Matchroom USA fighter, and that Eddie Hearn was already talking about making a fight between Rungvisai and his UK Matchroom fighter Cal Yafai in a unification. Estrada is promoted by Fernando Beltram of Zanfer Promotions. I think Golden Boy may have some options with him in the United States, and it was obvious in I think 2 of the judges had it 115 to 113, which is ridiculous. The fight was definitely not that close. The maximum you could give Rungvisai was 4 rounds, so 8 rounds to 4. I had it 117, 111. I think all of the commentators, both on DAZN and Sky, were in agreement that it should have been a wide, unanimous decision. But the scorecards were 115, 113 times 2, and I think 116, 112, which is, you can't argue with that. That's a reasonably accurate and correct scorecard. So Estrada now is once again, he was the unified flyweight champion and linear champion, and now he's the linear and super flyweight champion at the age of 32. One of the best boxers in the last 10 years. I personally think I hold him in very high esteem. I hold him ahead of Terence Crawford, ahead of people like Errol Spence, in terms of his skill, his ability. He's fought punchers, he's fought boxers, he's fought in different jurisdictions. Macau, China. He's fought Giovanni Segura, Milan, Melanda. He's fought Brian Valora. He's fought a very, very decent resume. So in terms of his next movements, I'd love to see a fight with him and Donny Nietes. I think that is the fight. That's a dream fight. That is a super fight. That's a pound for pound top 5 terms of fight, because Donny Nietes is definitely in the pound for pound top 10, according to me. People tend to base pound for pounds just on resume. They don't really understand what the true composition of it is, how it was devised, what it's about. So hopefully, they can make that fight happen. The promotional, there might be some obstacles, as there always is, but Nietes knows he's a veteran now. He's just looking for major championship, big money fights. I think this would be a big money fight. So hopefully somebody like Oscar De La Hoya or 360 Promotions, Tom Loeffler's can make that fight, because we definitely won that fight. So, and on the undercard, a magnificent fight between TJ Doheny and Daniel Roman. 118 pounds bantamweight unification between the WBA champion Roman and the IBF champion TJ Doheny, from Ireland but largely based in Australia. A brilliant fight, absolutely brilliant. Doheny, the much better boxer, the longer boxer, southpaw, gave the shorter fighter Roman a lot of trouble, a great deal of adversity, because he just wouldn't allow him to get into punch range. Roman his objective was just trying to scuttle forward, work his knee combinations, work the body, but Doheny was counter-punching him beautifully off the exit. Made a careless mistake early on, got caught with a left hook, glove touchdown, went into the ropes, so it was correctly ruled a knockdown after winning really the first couple of rounds. But Roman, to be fair, he overcame adversity. He showed me a great deal of toughness to make adjustments as well, and he landed a peach of an uppercut, I think in the 5th or the 6th, that busted Doheny's nose, caused him a great deal of managed to change the momentum of the fight. His combinations to the body was having a great deal of effect on Deheni, who was undefeated coming into this bout, whereas Roman had 2 defeats. But he's a vastly improved fighter. That was an early baptism. You know, boxing fans in particular just have a taboo against a guy with a defeat. You know, not understanding their backstory. You know, what sort of circumstances in which, whether the fighter had any decent promotion behind him, whether he had any amateur pedigree, whether he was just new to the sport. So you've got to look at every fighter within their individual merits, try and understand, you know, how they came up, you know, what their boxing education was before casting sort of, you know, misconceptions. So they were slugging it out, you know, the momentum was changing. Deheni came back in the latter rounds, had a massive round, you know, arguably even a 10-8 round where Roman didn't go down, but it was the body punches that hurt Roman, and you know, he was up against the ropes. Deheni was accurate, landing great combinations, but Roman came back in the latter rounds, dropped Deheni. So 2 10-8 rounds to him, won the 10th and the 11th. And Deheni, to be fair, you know, he showed great toughness to come back in the 12th, win the 12th, you know, to make it close. And the judges had it, I think they had it pretty wide, or 2 of the judges had it 116, 110 for Roman. I felt it was a much closer fight. I felt, although Roman had 2 10-8 rounds by virtue of knockdowns, TJ Deheni had 1 extremely dominating round, which one can deem to be a 10-8 round. So I felt a 115, 113 was a fair scorecard, but Roman definitely won the fight and unified the title. And you know, Deheni, you know, gave an excellent post-match interview. No complaints, no bitterness, no sour grapes. Gave tremendous credit to Danny Roman, you know. And that's how unification should be made, you know. It doesn't have to be bad blood or animosity. Fighters can show each other respect. You know, the fight was made very easily. You know, this was only Deheni's second defense and jumping straight in with a unification. So for all of the people that have been criticizing, you know, Eddie Hearn and DAZN, you know, they put on, this was a very good card. Even Jesse Vargas to kick off the live sort of, you know, the broadcast on Sky Sports, you know, stopped Humberto Soto. Good display to stop the Mexican veteran, it was a pretty good fight as long as it lasted. So, you know, 3 good fights. It was a very good card, and capped off by, you know, Estrada. So yeah, let me know your opinion on the 3 fights, how you guys scored the fight. What do you think of Estrada's performance, and who do you want to see Estrada next in the ring with? You know, you've got Cal Yafai out there as well. But nobody really wants to see that. Jervin Cajas, the Filipino Manny Pacquiao promotion based by fighter, he's out there, but he's not looked too good recently. Donnie Nieves, and yeah, let me know your comments and thoughts. Corruption in Boxing, I'm out.